In and Out of School Literacy by Mary Margaret Adams. While taking this class, I have been able to experience literacy in multiple arenas. At New Hope Elementary, I was placed in Miss Reddick's third grade classroom. The classroom was set up and structured in a way that really encouraged group learning. The desks were all arranged in groups. There was a reading corner where the students could collaborate and buddy read, and many times throughout the day where all 22 students could be found at the front of the room for a lesson. The walls of the classroom were covered in posters and work that the students had done themselves. Something that I thought was particularly interesting was the amount of Spanish translations my CT had on the walls. One wall in particular had numbers and Spanish translations, side by side, and other various objects like the window and lights were also labeled in Spanish. The classroom I was placed in had a significant amount of Hispanic children who spoke solely Spanish at home, and the labels were placed not only to help them, but to also make sure that they knew that their home language was valued in this class. A typical day in Miss Reddick's third grade classroom begins by breaking off into their small groups for language arts. Each group is given a different name. Some of these names include brass, woodwind, drums, and guitars. By labeling the groups in this way, she eliminates anyone feeling like they are not in the high reading group. The seemingly random groups go to different centers, including a session with her, Fluency Minute Flash, where the students have 1 minute to read as many sight words as they can, reading a chapter book, and Raz Kids, which is an online program where the kids read a short story or article and then have questions at the end to test their comprehension. It was during a session with Miss Reddick that I was able to observe students taking part in a literacy event. The students were working with non-fiction text and identifying text features. The text the students used was from a National Geographic and called Raising Raptors. Text features were relatively new to the students, as they had only just begun working with them on Monday. In order to participate in this literacy event, the students had to do quite a lot of code breaking. First, they had to figure out what a text feature was, and then they had to decide why it was helpful. Not an easy undertaking, but the kids were ready for the challenge. Miss Reddick began by reviewing what a text feature was, and reminding the group of the list of features they created in class together. Miss Reddick explained that the students did not need to have any prior knowledge about raptors to complete the activity. In fact, they would get most of the information they needed from the text features. The students had read the article the day before in small groups, and would now be reviewing and completing the activity. The group looked at pictures, subtitles, captions, and diagrams in order to review the article. An example of this came when she asked the group to tell her what a section of the article was about without rereading it. Most of the students knew to go and look at the subtitle of the paragraph and could identify the main points of the section. This led to a short discussion about how important subtitles were and how they could tell you what you were about to read. The group practiced identifying other text features in the article in the group, and then it was time for them to put into writing what they had just been doing orally. She was able to scaffold her students by writing the beginning of the sentence for her kids to get going. By allowing them to pick out a text feature on their own and identify how it helped enhance their understanding of the text, she was giving them some ownership of the text. Up until this point, Miss Reddick had been controlling them. A student is considered fluent in this literacy activity when they can identify a feature on their own and fully understand how it enhances their understanding of the reading. It is crucial that both parts of this are accomplished for a student to be considered fluent. Miss Reddick was able to tell if her students were actually comprehending or not. If they could not pick out a feature, then they did not comprehend. Another way she knew if they did not understand was if they picked out a feature, but their reason as to how it enhanced their understanding was not accurate. Being able to work with text features and use them to enhance your understanding of reading is a crucial skill to have later in life. This skill will be important later in school when it comes to being able to quickly find information you need. It is also a skill for life in general, as skimming through papers or an article to find key information is time-saving. For my out-of-school literacy event, I chose to participate in a fantasy football league. Before beginning fantasy football, I had always just thought it was something my guy friends and my dad and his work colleagues did for fun. After spending countless hours choosing my team, reviewing stats, and watching games, I realized just how wrong I was. I went into this project knowing only what I remembered from high school and college football games. As my dad helped me set up my own team, I had to do a lot of code breaking, which began by becoming familiar with the terminology I would need to be fluent in this literacy event. I began by observing my dad take part in a mock draft, which is a fake draft where you practice picking players from a long list to add to your team. I myself attempted a mock draft and was quickly overwhelmed at how fast-paced it was and realized I would have to figure out who I wanted on my team with multiple backups. I had many conversations with friends who knew football, and they gave me suggestions as to who I should pick. Then came the time for the actual draft, where the owners of a team take turns picking players. I was able to pick a total of 16 players, but 7 of those had to be on my reserve or my bench and could not play that week. Some other very important vocabulary I had to code break included bye week. This is a week that a player has off and can gain no points towards your fantasy total. Bye weeks become very important later on. The following 2 terms, free agent and waiver wire, are closely related. A free agent is a player currently not on any team and available on the waiver wire. The waiver wire is a list of free agent players that anyone can pick up and add to their team. The waiver wire becomes important when someone on your team has a bye week and you need to pick up an extra player for your team. There is nothing worse than forgetting a player has a bye week or is injured and cannot play that week. This results in 0 points for that position and can even result in a loss. I learned this the hard way when I forgot that Giovanni Bernard was out one week and did not make a change on my lineup. I did not get any points for his position and lost my game that week. Although there are many rules for fantasy football, there are a few rules and things to keep in mind that are more important than others. The first being that you have 9 players who are eligible to earn points each week, and that 7 must sit on your bench who are not eligible to earn points. You can gain or lose points depending on how individual players perform. Fantasy points are not determined based on if a team wins. This means that someone on your team can get a large amount of fantasy points even if their team loses. Points are received from touchdowns, passes, field goals, yards rushed, and a wide variety of other things. You can lose points if your team is knocked back or loses yardage, or if your quarterback is tackled before they throw the ball. You can also make changes to your lineup at any time as long as you do not try to switch a player while their game is already in progress. In order to become fluent in this literacy event, I had to check my lineup on a weekly basis and make adjustments to ensure the success of my team. It is important to note that in order to be fluent in this event, you do not have to win every game you play. Being fluent can be measured by having a full understanding of the various vocabulary terms, understanding how and when to use the waiver wire, and being able to read and track points gained by your players. After just a few weeks participating in this literacy event, it has proven to me that truly anyone can become fluent in this activity. It will definitely take some code breaking along the way though. This activity really made me experience some disequilibrium. I am so happy for the experience though, as I know there will be many students in my class who may feel this way about reading or other subjects. It taught me that they will need all of the support I can offer them to get them to be fluent.